Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Today is August 2nd, 2020. And today, the first story is going to be about the post office. So, this is going to be a historic turnout, this 2020 general election, based on everything we've seen in the primaries, based on what we know about voter enthusiasm against Trump. Uh, and due to the coronavirus, it's probably going to be a historic um, mail in turnout, as in most, or not most, but we are going to see more mail in votes than ever before, presumably. And Trump has consistently questioned the efficacy and the legitimacy or the safety of mail-in voting. He said it will be fraudulent. He said it would lead to massive voter fraud. And he actually, when asked about the integrity of the election in a recent interview with Chris Wallace, which you should definitely watch. It's a fantastic interview by Chris Wallace. Now, he didn't ask particularly good questions, but it was still, he asked questions that Trump isn't usually asked and something he wasn't expecting from Fox News. And they were literally milk toast questions, and Trump couldn't handle it. It was a fantastic interview. But listen to what Trump had to say at the end of the interview about the integrity of the election.
You don't know until you see. It depends. I think mail-in voting is going to rig the election. I really do. Uh,
Are you suggesting that you might not accept the results of the
I
election?
have to see.
So, as you heard in there, he said that he'll have to see. He later goes on to say that he will leave Chris Wallace and the country in suspense as to whether he will accept the results of the election. I mean, which is just, it's completely unprecedented and it's unacceptable. And but it's something we've sadly become accustomed to. So, I mentioned Barr's testimony in my last episode. During that same testimony, he was asked about the integrity of the election himself. William Barr, being the Attorney General of the United States, testifying before the House Judiciary Committee over the past week. And here's what Attorney General Bill Barr had to say.
You echoed the president's conspiracy theory when you suggested in at least 3 interviews that, quote, foreign countries could manufacture counterfeit ballots, end quote, to influence the presidential election, correct? You did that in at least 3 interviews?
Yes.
Okay. But in fact, you have no evidence that foreign countries can successfully sway our elections with counterfeit ballots, do you?
No, I don't, but I have common
Okay.
sense.
Okay, well, and that's what you responded when you were directly challenged on that. You said, no, you didn't have evidence, but it was obvious.
So, Attorney General Bill Barr is just as destructive to American democracy and the fabric of our society, and just horrible on policy, just as Donald Trump is. But the only thing Bill Barr has over Donald Trump is that he's an educated. Uh, he knows how to say things in a polite, formal manner, and Trump has no idea, but he's just as destructive. Make no have no doubt there when you're watching, if you decide to watch the entire testimony, which I encourage you to do. But when he's pressed, and so he carries water for Donald Trump in that he will echo his conspiracy theories. But when it comes to him being pressed on specifically, he has nothing to say. He says, "Well, I just have common sense," because there is no evidence that mail-in ballots is a way in which foreign countries can influence in a massive way, or in any way at all, the outcomes of our elections. So it's very difficult to do fraudulent mail-in ballots because if you don't know how elections work, okay, they're usually run at the county level. So each county has a election board. You have to be registered to vote, okay? Each voting ballot that you're sent is printed at the county with a unique identification number. So I can't just get one ballot from my county and then go out and print a lot of them because they'll all have the same number. Each ballot is unique, and and you have to be registered to vote again. So it's like if you wanted to be a foreign entity uh, to mess with mail-in ballots, you would have to make a number of a ballot that somebody else didn't use, vote as somebody who you have to think doesn't vote, because if they do vote and then you also vote for them, then there will be two votes and it will be obvious. And so it's so absurd to suggest that it could somehow, through mail-in ballots, there could somehow be foreign actors interfering. It's the least likely way that anything could happen. It's probably the most secure way. There are several states that do exclusively mail-in ballots, meaning only mail-in ballots. Um, and there are a lot easier ways to mess with elections if you're a foreign entity. You could spread disinformation, as is happening right now, and as happened, to a massive extent in 2016 in relation to Hillary Clinton. Make just fake bot accounts that will spread conspiracy theories, and then people who are on the internet who are gullible will spread them for you. Messing with the in-person voter machines is a lot easier. We've seen instances, recorded instances of people wanting to press one candidate and it consistently selects another candidate. Now, is that a foreign entity trying to mess with our elections, or is that just the machines messing up? Who knows? Either way, it's pretty easily caught unless you're somebody who's just nervous to tell the people running the election that it's not working for some reason. I mean, it's the messing with mail-in ballots would be the last way a foreign country would even have the best outcomes in influencing this sort of thing. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. As I was saying, Trump is not taking a passive role in this sort of thing. He's actively trying to undermine the USPS, which will be in charge of the largest mail-in voting probably in history. And how is he doing that? On June 15th, he appointed a new postmaster general named Louis DeJoy. Louis DeJoy, and so the post office is suffering massively, like many other businesses, because of the coronavirus. People are getting sick. People are dying. They're losing a lot of money. And if you don't know, uh, the prices of the post office are set by an independent government organization. They're not market prices. They are purposefully meant to be low prices so that this is accessible to everybody. And even with these very low prices, the U.S. Postal Service has been self-funded for decades. I mean, right now they need a bailout just like any other company, like small, this isn't a small business, but just like any other company and small business and corporation needs a bailout right now during coronavirus, the USPS also needs a bailout. And in the original COVID relief bill, there was $10 billion set aside for the post office, but the post office has not yet accessed that money because it is contingent upon pretty much uh, letting many operations within the post office be under the direct control of Steve Mnuchin, which is the Secretary of the Treasury. And so Louis DeJoy, the new Postmaster General, has not only cut overtime, but he's told people, he's sent a memo to post offices that not to take mail from receiving centers or distribution centers that would cause them to then work overtime because they just can't pay these people anymore. And this is somebody appointed by Trump, or this is somebody appointed by a no, it was somebody appointed by Trump. That's what it was. Yes. No, and so he's taking an active role in appointing people and working through government to try to undermine our institutions that make our elections safe. So yes, you know what? The integrity of mail-in ballots should be questioned when we have an underfunded and neglected post office, because then they will not be able to take all the mail-in ballots in a timely manner, and that will be bad for the election. There could be things that are lost. We could have to wait a very long time for these things to settle in, and who knows what could happen. And that could influence voting in other states if the early results are a lot different than what they would be once all the mail-in ballots are in. I mean, this is what Republicans always do, though, and this is my final point on the post office. This is what Republicans always do. They point to things we have in the public sector, whether it's Medicaid, whether it's public schools, whether it's the post office, well, the post office doesn't receive public funds, but unless it's a bailout like right now. But they point to things in our public sectors. They say they defund those things because they have this whole austerity libertarian mindset. They say, hey, look how bad these things are now that I've defunded them, although they leave that part out. Look how bad these institutions now are. why are we still giving them more money when they're failing? Let's take even more money away from them. And now they fail even more because they have less money to work with. And then it's a self-perpetuating cycle of saying, well, look how bad they're doing. Let's take more money. Well, now look how even much worse they're doing even now. Let's take away even more money. So this tactic of doing this is not new by Republicans, but um, to use it for an election and, and sort of could have expected this from Donald Trump just because he's like a sick guy, but other Republicans are standing by and echoing it as well. It should just show you that these people, like I said in the previous episode, they always compromise on their values. They don't care. And Trump has even said in the past that the Democratic relief bill that was initially proposed would have I think, increased measures to expand absentee ballots to everybody, which is what mail-in voting is. Mail-in voting is literally just is expanding absentee ballots to everybody, or saying that you can apply for an absentee ballot and fear of getting coronavirus is a valid reason, because you need a valid reason to and some states have already done that, but Democrats proposed a plan to make it even easier for more people to vote. And Trump said in an interview that if more people voted, Republicans would lose. That, and he recognizes that, and this has been the big secret that Republicans have been trying to keep for years, that the more people that vote in any place in the United States, the less Republicans win. This is just true. They know this. They've been knowing this, and now he's actually taking it into action and trying to directly suppress votes in this way. It's authoritarian. It's unacceptable, and we've sadly become desensitized to these things. So there was an article in Vanity Fair recently on Thursday, and very interesting article. It broke. Vanity Fair broke this story, and basically, it was talking about how there was a team made in early April by Jared Kushner. Jared Kushner is the son-in-law of Donald Trump, and obviously he has positions at the White House. This is a clear violation of emoluments. He's a senior advisor, and he was in charge of several things at the White House, actually. And he's, again, directly related to the president. But anyway, he made a task force that included his former college roommate and some other scientists, right? Jared, his roommate, and scientists coming together to figure out a plan on how we could bounce back from coronavirus, how we can make a national effort, a nationally led effort to bounce back from coronavirus. This included contact tracing. This included, instead of doing massive testing, doing targeted testing. These were things. It's not like they came up with some super crazy intricate plan. It was things that we obviously should have done at the time, and they made this plan in early April. And apparently, according to people who were working on the plan, it just, as they describe in the article, went poof. It just went away. Suddenly, the plan that they had been working on for presumably like a few weeks, and the plan, exactly like as I described, had just gone away. They stopped talking about it. They stopped hearing about it. They never reported it to Donald Trump, although they were apparently scheduled to tell Trump the plan. And people were very skeptical as to what happened. Well, I mean, it was a secret task force, so nobody knew about it. This is a recent breaking report from Vanity Fair, and apparently, according to an expert who talks to the White House frequently, spoke to a member of the task force that was in charge of making this plan, and that member expressed sentiments that, or he expressed sentiments that member, he or she expressed sentiments that, since it looked like at the time that blue states were hit the hardest, blue states meaning states that typically vote Democrat, were being hit the hardest, that it didn't make sense politically to act, because if we just left it up to Democratic governors and they failed, this would be good for Republicans and it would look bad for Democrats. Now, this should really strike you as, I mean, it's sort of what we come to expect out of the Trump administration, things like this. We've known that he politicizes things, but they are willing to, and I guess we've always known this, but now here's the proof is right here. I mean, not proof, but this isn't proof of anything, okay? But we have evidence and testimony, not testimony. We have quotes from people who speak closely to the White House confirming things that we already know about Donald Trump, that he's willing to risk the lives of people. He's willing to politicize things that otherwise don't need to be politicized. And look, this plan that they came up with wasn't some sort of crazy out there plan, again, that nobody else could have come up with. It was really basic stuff, and they just put it aside. And you have to really wonder why. What was the? We're doing worse right now than any other developed nation in the world, and that has been the truth for months. Okay, I mean, I know people want to ignore that. So I don't know how some people ignore that. I guess they just forget that other countries exist, but we are literally doing worse right now than any other developed nation, while other developed nations are currently getting hit with their second wave, and we still have not experienced the second wave. So this is exactly what we've come to expect. He's willing to risk people's lives, especially in blue states. Blue lives don't matter as much as red lives, and blue lives in this, I'm referencing Democratic voters. And I mean, it's absolutely insane. And when you think about the response to coronavirus by the administration, you really have to think like anyone could have done. I sincerely think that if I just got me and a couple of my friends and we sat down for a few weeks and we talked about what's the best way in which uh, we could, our country could respond to coronavirus if we have the proper resources. I feel like we could have come up with a plan as good or even better than Jared Kushner did. Not even that, just in handling. It seems like the Donald Trump administration in every single turn uh, just messed up and did the wrong thing, and they politicized things. We've already known that they've politicized things, but it's crazy to think that they even politicized the response to this, because you got to think they made this plan, it went nowhere. Where did it go? And again, just final thing on this. I mean, this absolutely stinks to high heaven, as the term goes. Like, this stinks on every possible level. Jared Kushner, son-in-law of the president, working on a task force and as a senior advisor, that's an obvious, clear violation of the emoluments clause of the Constitution, which says you cannot put your family members in positions of power, or your friends, or or in positions where they could make money potentially. And so that stinks on that level. He put his roommate, his former college roommate, on the team to do this. And so these are all just violations of emoluments, and then they didn't even go through with the plan. So this just stinks. This story is horrible on every possible level. And again, this isn't. If this were any other presidency, it would be breaking news. It would be the headline for weeks. But this is just another story, sadly, with the Trump presidency. Final story. So, the Department of Homeland Security, who has been under recent scrutiny for sending federal troops to Portland, Oregon, um, has fired their top intelligence official, Brian Murphy, after he was found compiling data on journalists. Now, this was after a report was released by the Washington Post in which they showed, in which they reported that the Department of Homeland Security had circulated three open source intelligence reports to federal law enforcement agencies, so like Customs and Border Patrol, DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency, ATF, all these agencies that had shown up with officers at Portland and who are under the control of the Department of Homeland Security. They reported three. They circulated three reports among these agencies, one of which was compiling data on journalists about their tweets and about them tweeting out potentially classified information. Now, again, he was only fired. Murphy was only fired after the Washington Post broke this story, and he had been asked in the past, and not only in one report they had been tracking journalists. In another report of the three that was circulated, they were collecting data and tracking messages between protesters on an app called, give me a second here, Telegram, on an app called Telegram. They were reporting, when he had previously asked if they were tracking the messages of protesters, he had said no, he being Brian Murphy, the man who was fired and the man who was actually found, according to the Washington Post, to have been circulating messages by protesters. Now, to people that are not into politics, it's sort of hard. Well, I mean, let me say it this way. To people who are not into politics in the United States, it's sort of hard to emphasize why this is so bad and what and like the implications behind this and why was he even fired in the first place. Some people might be wondering, well, if they're journalists tweeting classified information out, potentially classified information, it wasn't even confirmed, then that what should be a problem. We value the First Amendment in this country, right? We value our civil liberties, and that includes our free press. And that doesn't mean people have a complete freedom to tweet classified information or say classified information or publish classified information whenever they want. But for a department to collect data and send it to local law enforcement, it's a clear violation of our rights to a free press, and then tracking our messages is a violation of our civil liberties. This is exactly what I mean. Again, if Obama had done this, if Obama was, and okay, actually, to be completely fair, actually, Obama did expand the Patriot Act to further spy on citizens, and that actually it was a big story for a long time. Do you remember when the whole NSA meme was a thing for several months? And that was and people were afraid of the FBI looking at them through their webcam and everything. Remember, I think everybody remembers that era. And so actually, yeah, when another president does do this sort of thing, it's bad, and it's a story we should be looking at for weeks, and rightfully so, correctly so. We did that. We scrutinized Obama for that, and that was something he deserved to be scrutinized over. But here is the Department of Homeland Security, who has, against the wishes of local law enforcement and local officials in Oregon, are consistently having a presence there. I think they're pulling out. I think they pulled out recently, but have consistently had a presence there and are now found to be collecting data on journalists and protesters who have not committed any crimes, because obviously if they had, they would have been charged. This is a clear violation of our Second Amendment and the civil liberties that we value, or that we're supposed to value here in the United States, protecting a free press, protecting our right to protest. I mean, you'd expect this sort of thing from China. And not only do you expect this sort of thing, you always hear of this sort of thing happening in other countries, like developing nations, or what we would call communist nations, of them spying on, of government spying and completely infringing on the civil liberties of its citizens. But here it is happening right here. And just like in my last episode when I talked about fascism, this is fascistic. It's totally fair to call this fascistic. This is not this is okay. If you are giving this information to federal troops who are on local land that they are not welcome on, making arrests away from the courthouse in which they are tasked to protect, and the only legal reason they have to be there, and they are given information about protesters and journalists, that's about as close to forcible suppression of opposition you can get without being so direct about it. Again, nobody's direct, or a lot of our politicians are very careful not to be direct about their tactics, and are the machinations within our politics are very careful not to be direct in their violation of our civil liberties. But this is definitely a fascistic move by the president and by the Department of Homeland Security. All right, guys, that's the end of it. That was the end of my notes and what I had to talk about today. A lot to be vigilant of these days. I'll try to keep you guys informed. I try to share Well, actually, no, I don't share articles as much as I probably should, but I'll try to keep you guys informed through this, and I'll be uploading more. I'm going to try to do at least 2 uploads every week. It might be sometimes one day after the other, like I did recently. I might do one on Thursday, one on the weekend. We'll see. It might be even more than 2 episodes. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.